What up, what up? It's Hayden Schaap here. I am continuing my study of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I also have a couple other videos and snippets, audio snippets coming out that are going to be pretty cool, like a reaction to one's with Elon Musk, actually, which is pretty sick, and some other cool things coming out. So on my channel, I talk a lot about the things that I are most passionate about, and that's persuasion and influence, but not just any persuasion and influence, the right kind. So truth-centered persuasion and influence, truth-centered personal development, and then truth-centric leadership. And those are the things that I am most passionate about right now when it comes to this type of stuff. And if you like any of it, subscribe on any of the ways that you consume content. I'm also, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And like the video if you're on YouTube so that more people can get it, so that the algorithm is favorable to me. All of the algorithms, the powers that be, so that they're favorable to me. But more than anything, the reason why I decided to do this was because it's the thing that I was most uncomfortable doing, like one-take videos of my own studies and my own insights. Letting people peek into my brain felt really uncomfortable in that way. Just because I knew that I had been asking others, like, I've been asking like my sales leaders, I'd been asking you guys to like study 7 habits and saying that I was doing it too, but I just decided like, okay, the quantum change that comes from living or trying to live according to the 7 habits in our leadership training, you can't do that. You can't shortcut it without actually like learning the stuff for yourself. And so I realized that like, if I'm going to ask other people to do it in a meaningful way, then I want to kind of show that I'm also doing it in a meaningful way. And as I was reading it this time around, Covey says, study with the intent to teach. And I had this thought just pop into my mind that was more like it wasn't just like a little feather, it was like a freaking boulder that was weighing on me. That was, you should do the thing that's uncomfortable, which is make this public, because if you do a live study publicly, then you're really going to have to embody the idea of studying with the intent to teach. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And for you guys that I'm asking to do it as well, I hope that you're doing it. You should do it like how I'm doing it right now, like publicly. It's super useful and beneficial. It's been game-changing and life-changing for me. Following along, leave comments of the things that you like. Talon, I saw that you did that, dude. Thanks for doing that. And then any of you other salesmen that are watching this stuff or following along, or even if you're not, if you don't work with me or not part of that circle, this stuff is so beneficial. But I'm going to be talking to like my leaders and the salesmen that I work with, but just know that this stuff, it passes the stress test of if it's important, because it applies to everything. All right, here we go. So I mentioned last time before finishing up like this idea of, I didn't want to just skim through the idea of centers, because this is a really important part of habit 2, which is begin with the end in mind. So habit 1 is, I'm the creator, right? Like I don't have to be a victim to anything, anyone, or even to my past mistakes, habits, or behaviors. In fact, the only way that I can actually fulfill my true potential is if I realize that I not only have the capacity, but as part of my unique identity as a human being, I have a duty and like obligation to be the creator of my life. And if I'm not the creator of my life, then I might as well just be an animal, because I'm not employing the unique human endowments of like self-awareness, of imagination, and of conscience. And therefore, I'm going to be riddled. My life will be riddled with not only like mental and physical health issues, but it will be riddled with even something maybe more damning, which is just lack of meaning, right? So that's what proactivity is all about, is being able to become a self-aware human being and own where I am in my life because of my past choices and because of how I responded to the circumstances or the other things or the other people in my life, even if my circumstances were unfavorable. It's owning those things, and then from there saying, oh, wait, I have the power to choose to become someone different. Or maybe it's actually vice versa, like the opposite of what I just said, which is, because I am a proactive human being and I can live a life according to truth and according to the things that are most meaningful, because I am that, because I can go create a different future than my past, I now own my past and the choices that I made, because you can't have one without the other. I was talking to my wife about this last night. We were having this was our version of pillow talk last night. Okay, we were having this discussion. I was like, hey, can I share some of the things that I've been learning in my study, and just as talking about some of these ideas that was most meaningful. And I said, one of the things that dawned on me as I was studying proactivity this go around in 7 Habits, it dawned on me that like it's impossible to accept responsibility for your future life and have the power to change. It's impossible to do that without also accepting the fact that you are the reason you got you where you are. So it's impossible to say I can create a different life than what I currently have without also saying, oh crap, I'm responsible for the life I have actually. I'm responsible for the choices that I made in response to all the stimuli of my life. Now that doesn't mean I didn't have maybe I didn't have a bad circumstance or was born in a bad situation, or whatever all your adverse reasons for why you're sucking where you are right now. That doesn't mean that that's not also true. But what it does mean is that you made choices in response to those stimuli that got you where you are. And it's the sum total of those things that you have to own, because unless you own them, you can't actually pick up that other end of the stick and own the fact that you can change your future. And anyway, so that was a really powerful concept to me, and we had a long discussion about it. It was really cool. We talked about how like Sarah, she's seeing all that stuff in her own life and in her own family, and it's been interesting to see how like it's not just what happens to us that causes the problem. That's just one part of it. It's how the most important part of it, though, is how we respond to what happens to us. That's a long-winded way of saying be proactive is habit 1 and it's impactful. So now that I know that I'm the creator, now we go into habit 2, which is, okay, now what's the creation we're making? And habit 1 implies that you become a proactive individual, and your choices revolve around what's most important. That's why he talks about truth-centered living and principle-centered living before even habit 1. He talks about that in principles and paradigms. But now we're going to get into what's beginning with the end in mind, with my unique contribution, my identity, beginning with those things. That's how we build the blueprint for not only massive results and success, but for a life of actual true meaning. Okay, so here we are going to get into the center idea, and this is so incredibly powerful. I'm very excited to study this stuff anew, because before, when I was doing my study, I was kind of reading principles that I had read a ton of times before, but I was pre-reading them before I was doing the videos, and I realized like I don't really want to do that. I actually want to do the study live, because then you get my real journey of the things that I'm learning anew here, even though I've read this so many times. So I'm reading this brand new again. And even if I do know what it's going to say, I am trying to read it as if it's the first time, because it doesn't matter if I know what it's going to say. If this stuff is really good, it's going to apply to me personally right now in a different way, because I'm a different human being than the last time I read it. Okay, at the center, all right? In order to write a personal mission statement, we must begin at the very center of our circle of influence. And what's a personal mission statement? It's, as Covey talks about, a personal mission statement is it's like our written constitution. It's the thing that embodies what our unique, who we are in our unchanging core and our unique mission on this earth, essentially, and our governing principles. In order to write a personal mission statement, we must begin at the very center of our circle of influence. That center composed of our most basic paradigms, the lens through which we see the world. It is here that we deal with our vision and our values. So vision and values is a very like intriguing concept, but it's got some pretty big implications here. Like we're starting here. It is here that we use our endowment of self-awareness to examine our maps, and if we value correct principles, if we actually value things that are unchanging, that are true and correct, to make certain that our maps accurately describe the territory, right? So to make sure that we're not trying to use a map to Chicago when what we really need, when we're trying to go to like Salt Lake City or when we're trying to go to Los Angeles, we have to evaluate, like, does the map that we're using in our life actually define what the terrain is, that there's not a mountain over here, but the map says that it's over here, because that only leads to frustration, to getting to the wrong place faster, as Covey says. And to make certain that our maps accurately identify the territory, that our paradigms are based on principles and on reality, on how the world actually operates and functions. It is here that we use our endowment of conscience as a compass to help us detect our own unique talents and areas of contribution. So fascinating. I freaking love this stuff so much. Okay, so I'm going to highlight here just the three things that make up like what a human being actually is. It's our, or at least our unique human endowments is what he calls them. Our self-awareness. That self-awareness just lets us know, like, do we actually value correct principles, and are we using the right maps? Our paradigms are based on true principles, right? And here we use our conscience as a compass to help us detect our own unique talents and areas of contribution. It is here we use our endowment of imagination. I was like, where's imagination? Did I skip over that? It's here we use our endowment of imagination to mentally create the end we desire, giving direction and purpose to our beginnings and providing substance of a written personal constitution. Man, freaking powerful. You could spend like an entire session diving into that. It's really cool. So that's where, that's where we really have to like focus on, okay, who am I using the right maps? And then use my conscience as a compass to say, like, what are my unique talents and areas of contribution? And then use my imagination to imagine a new world, as Covey says, a new world of possibility that doesn't currently exist, to mentally create the end that we desire. It's also here that that our focused efforts achieve the greatest results. And this is the thing that, I didn't want to dive into this part last time, but like this is the thing that is hard for me to drive home when am trying to teach this stuff, these concepts to like our leadership group, is the fact that like everyone wants to know how to go make $1 million, or like I've talked about, like making deca millionaires in their 20s, or having $1 million net worth before you're 25, and like all the cash that you can make in like the jobs that we do or whatever, right? Everyone wants to know, like, okay, give me the blueprint. But then whenever we sit down and we talk about this stuff, where I say, hey, read the 7 Habits, or like whenever we talk about this stuff, like I was saying yesterday, like eyes just start glazing over. And they're like, yeah, but Hayden, when can we talk about making $1 million? I thought that's what we were going to talk about. I'm like, dude, that's coming. In fact, it's coming in a way that like you won't even have enough buckets to pick up off of the street all the excess stuff that you're going to make because of how effective this actually is. So buckle down and focus on the things that matter most, because if you don't, you're just going to be climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. Every step that you take is going to get you to the wrong place faster, right? It's like that's why all this stuff is so important, and why I want to get better at being persuasive about communicating it is because if you don't do this, you'll reach the goals that seem audacious relative to what everybody else is talking about in the world, and you'll realize at the end of it that you're going to have to rely on other things that are really bad in order to feel fulfilled, because the goal itself will not fulfill you. However, if you can start at the center here, or start beginning with the end in mind, the most important things, the eulogy exercise, all of that, it's not just lip service. It is the thing that makes the biggest difference. And as Covey says here as well, which is what I just highlighted in pink here, it is also here that our focused efforts achieve the greatest results. So you want to go increase your sales output by 1,000%, and I literally mean like 1,000%, 10x. Start at the center, beginning with the end in mind, and identifying your unique mission, contribution, your vision, and your values, and making sure those things are based on true principles. You want to go have a more happy and fulfilling marriage with like, I said this last time and I thought it was kind of funny, because then Spotify or whatever freaking service I was using put a bunch of different Trojan condom ads on my freaking stuff. But you want to go have like the most fulfilling marriage ever, and like a great sex life, and an incredibly powerful, like emotionally intimate relationship with your spouse or with a loved one. If that's with a spouse. And then aside from that, you want to go have like a really meaningful relationship with your family, with your kids. Start here, right? All of the things that you think you want, you will have them in abundance if you can start with this stuff that is actually seemingly most boring for everyone else, but is the most important thing to do. And that's why I love this part that he says, it is also here that our focused efforts achieves the greatest results. As we work within the very center of our circle of influence, we expand it, so the things that we can control. This is the highest leverage production capability work. Or like if I want to increase my own ability to produce assets on a recurring basis for forever, the highest leverage work that I could do for myself as a production capability asset, significantly this will impact the effectiveness of every aspect of our lives, as Covey says. Man, just like freaking, this is so good. I'm so glad I'm doing this. And I'm so glad that there's the technology to be able to do it. It's awesome. And that it can compensate for someone as sordo as me, as like dumb as me. Whatever is at the center of our life will be the source of our security, guidance, wisdom, and power. Okay, so here's kind of a breakthrough concept that I had. So I was actually I was meeting with a friend of mine who I work directly with. This applies to you guys too, like the salesman, because this is part of a friend from my content team, who's an editor of mine. And basically, I did a goal setting session with him, and we were talking about like your unique contribution values. It's something that I want to do with all the salesmen and with my leaders as well. Anyway, so what we were talking about was, he was like, I have like a lot of ambitions. I want to like make good money. I want to go contribute. I want to give back. I want to do something really big, but I just don't know where to start. And I don't know how to get that. And he's like, I want to be like where you are, like in the future, but I just don't know where to start. It's hard for me to organize myself to get to that point. And it's interesting because like the thing that I was thinking was like, you don't start with a plan to go make all of the money. You start by clarifying the things you value most and making sure those things are based off of true principles. Okay, I'm beating a dead horse with that. But what I realized is that that we all have a center, the thing that we base all of our decisions off of, that gives us security, that gives us guidance, that gives us wisdom, it gives us power and strength. That doesn't necessarily mean that center is good, right? Security represents our sense of worth, our identity, our emotional anchorage, our self-esteem, and our basic personal strength or lack of it, right? So if my center is focused on, if I have a friend center, for example, then my whole self-esteem is going to be built around what my friends think of me. If I have a family center, everything about my security is going to stem from what my family thinks of me. It's going to stem from my feeling of self-worth is going to stem from how they feel about me. My identity is going to be based off of them and how they feel about me. My emotional anchorage, I'm going to get my emotional worth from them, right? And then, so the next aspect of how you can clarify and identify your center is you get guidance from that thing. So guidance means your source of direction in life. It's encompassed by your map, your internal frame of reference that interprets for you what's happening out there, our standards, our principles, or implicit criteria that govern moment-by-moment decisions, making and doing. So basically, what Covey's saying is like, I'll take the example of like if you're a friend center, if you have a friend center, and that's where you derive your guidance from, that you're going to take the advice of your friends over everybody else, right? I was talking with one of you guys today, one of our leaders, and he basically was saying, I had a guy that a person I was recruiting, and as I was building my sales team, and when he went home for Christmas, he started talking to his mom and his grandma, and he decided that he didn't want to sell he didn't want to come out and work with us anymore because his grandma changed his opinion apparently. And immediately in my mind, I was like, that dude is family centered because he's taking guidance from his family. And okay, so does that mean that it's bad to take guidance from your family though? No, it doesn't. But only if you're taking guidance from your family according to what you have defined as your own values. And if those values are based off of true principles, then taking guidance from your family that falls in line with those true principles would mean that it's good to take advice from your family. So like in this case, I would highly argue that person taking advice from their grandma to not do a sales job because they think salesmen are sleazy. I would actually argue that that's the wrong thing to do. So being in that sense, being family-centered is a terrible idea. Why? Because that paradigm might not align with truth. Who's to say that doing the job, that sales job, who's to say that doing the sales job with us, it wouldn't be the best possible thing that person could do for themselves? And then it would change every aspect of their life, which it will, and will increase their ability to contribute meaningfully back to their grandparents, back to their family over time. Who's to say that doing that sales job, which it will, won't be the very thing that makes them millions and millions of dollars over the course of their life as a residual effect of who they become? Is that not good for the contribution that you're going to have for the people you care about most in your life? That would align you with true center, with truth, more than listening to your grandma to not do a job because she thinks that it's like a sleazy thing. So, now let's say you were money-centered, though. You would filter the guidance that you get from your family based off of if it's going to make the most money or not. So if your grandma said, don't do the sales job, you'd say, F you, grandma, I'm going to go do the sales job. Why? Because I'm possession-centered. I'm money-centered, right? So you might actually make the same decision to go do the sales job if you were money-centered versus if you were principle-centered. You might actually make the same decision, which is really interesting. But doing that decision for the wrong reasons and not having it focused on a principle center, it changes everything about the quality of that decision, which is kind of really fascinating. And this, for me, if I'm being totally honest, the concepts of this part of the book have been previously so difficult for me to grasp. They've only recently just kind of been clarified in my mind because of doing the study in this way, like having to speak the ideas out loud. And so hopefully me doing that gives more guidance and clarity to how important these concepts actually are, because it's really, really fascinating, but it's also, again, like I said, impactful. Okay, wisdom. Again, our center is going to give us what we base everything about our lives on, the quality of our life. We're living on a center, right? All of the things are stemming from a center. That doesn't necessarily mean that center is good. And so that center gives us security, it gives us guidance, and then the last two things are it gives us wisdom and it gives us power. So as Covey says, wisdom is your perspective on life, your sense of balance, your understanding of how the various parts and principles apply and relate to each other. So it's being able to filter like this is good, this is bad. This is going to have the best outcomes for me based off of what I value. This is not. It embraces judgment. It embraces discernment. It embraces comprehension. It's the greatest. It's the gestalt or oneness and integrated wholeness. So it allows you to basically see how all the parts of your life fit together. And again, though, if you're family centered, then the way you interpret how all those things should fit together is going to be based off of seen through the lens of only caring about how your family might be affected by how those things come together. So when it comes to, let's say your family wants you to go boating on Sunday, but you actually, you're torn because your church tells you shouldn't go boating on Sunday as an example, but your family says you want to. Well, if you're family centered, then it's the wisdom part of that center that is going to make you say, well, because I'm family centered, that's the thing I care about most, right? And my church says they care about family, but because you're family centered, you'll start justifying, you'll saying, hey, my church cares about family. My church says I shouldn't go boating on Sunday, but my family, because the church says my family is the most important thing, I'm going to go boating on Sunday. I'm going to make that choice because my family gives me my sense of wisdom. My family center makes it so that I have my sense of wisdom that will make me make choices in the right way, and the right choices to make are always putting my family as a priority. Interesting, right? That's kind of that's an intricate concept. Now, let's say, but if you're church-centered, how would you make that decision? You would say, F you, family. I know the church says that I should care about family, but you guys are the sinners. You're going boating on Sunday. You're the freaking sinners, right? Now, if you're principle-centered, though, what decision would you make? Well, what if your family member was not a member of your church and you had tried your whole life to get them to talk to you, but they just didn't talk to you because you were a member of that church? They just totally hate you. Except for one day that family member calls you up. Family member says, hey, I really want you to go boating with me. And you realize that the thing you value most is truth. You realize that the thing you value most is principles and truth and your contribution in life and what you would help people become. And so you're looking at the end of your life and you're saying, I wonder if this could be the very thing that would make it so that I could, because I value truth and because the church I belong to values that truth, I want more than anything for this family member to somehow have that in their life. And so maybe you call them and you say, listen, I'm a member of this church, and this is the reason why we haven't talked for so long, and I know you want me to go boating, but here's the thing. I made a commitment to God that I wouldn't go to, not to my church. I made a commitment to God that I wouldn't I wouldn't go boat, ever do things on Sunday that didn't revolve around these certain things. And the reason I made that commitment, I want you to know, is because I really value my word, and I value, I know some reason, like God told me to, the church that I believe in, somehow I know that's what God might want. And so I've made that decision, and that decision might even be wrong. I fully recognize that, family member. And I don't need you to understand that, but what I do need you to understand is, like, I also care about you. And so I'm wondering, like, is there not a way we could just go at a different time? Because I really want to go boating with you, but I also want to keep my commitment to God, even though you might not understand that. Is there a way we could do it like another time? Now, if this was me, that's what I would do if I was principle-centered. But if I was family-centered, I'd go with a family member. If I was church-centered, I'd go to church no matter what, right? But anyway, you kind of get what my point is there, right? But what's the function, the mechanism at play there? It's the wisdom that I derive from my center is going to govern how I make that choice. So that's why it's important to be on the right center, because now let's say if I was a principle-centered person and I had that conversation with that family member who might hate me because of my church or hate the church itself that I go to. If I'm a principle-centered person, I won't be affected by whether or not that family member chooses to still continue to hate me because they don't understand. I'll be able to empathize with them more. I'll be able to, like, maybe write them a letter again. But if I'm a church-centered person, I'm going to say, I don't care what you think about me. I'm doing what I think is right because that's what my church said, right? If I'm a family-centered person, I'm going to not care about how my values influence my family member because I'm just going to want them to like me. So I'm going to say F you to everything else I say I care about. I'm going to go with my family member. It just changes everything about the quality, and it gives you, again, going back to, it not only gives you wisdom in how to make the decisions and how all of the moving parts fit together, it gives you security in that you're trying to make the right ones, and it gives you, again, this last one is power. It gives you power. Power is your faculty or capacity to act. So your center is where you derive your true sense of, like, power and strength. Gives you the capacity to act, the strength and the potency to accomplish something. It is the vital energy to make choices and decisions. So it's not just the wisdom or it's not just the way that you see how all the variables fit together to make the decision. It's or the guidance to or the security behind the outcomes of that decision. It's the strength to make the right decisions as well. It's the strength to not go sit on the curb because you committed that today you would not take a break while you were knocking the doors or cold calling the people. It's because if that is based off of somehow based off of a true principle, it will give you the strength to not do it. Someone's goals are not based off of truth if they don't go and give everything in their power to achieve their goals. Why? Because if it was based off of truth, they would have the strength to go do it. Anyway, I could go super deep into that, but okay. It's the vital energy to make choices and make decisions. It also includes the capacity to overcome deeply embedded habits and to cultivate higher, more effective ones. So when someone sets a goal that is audacious, like if you set a goal for the sales season and then it's super audacious, and then you keep shying away from it because you're like, no, but what about my past habits though? Like, I'm not going to be able to do that because of who I was before. That would just dictate that maybe your goal is not set based off of a true principle that is really, really meaningful. Because if it was, according to Covey, then you would have the capacity to overcome deeply embedded habits and to cultivate a higher, more effective set of habits. That's super insightful. These 4 factors, as Covey says, security, guidance, wisdom, and power, are interdependent. So that's why I was kind of getting tripped up as I was talking there a second ago, is because I'm like, you can't talk about like one aspect of the way you live your life and your center without talking about the other. You can't talk about how you make decisions with the wisdom aspect without also talking about how the result of those decisions and the security you get by having the right center, right? or from your center in general. They're interdependent. They work interdependently. They link together. They work synergistically together. Security and clear guidance bring true wisdom. Gosh. Wisdom becomes the spark or catalyst in the release of direct power. When these four factors are present together, harmonized and enlivened by each other, they create the great force of a noble personality, a balanced character, a beautifully integrated individual. Dude, what the heck, man? That is so impactful. So when we can actually recognize, what does he say? When these four factors are present together, harmonized and enlivened by each other, they create a great force of a noble personality. So you want to be a noble person? You want to be recognized as a noble person in your life? Go base your every decision that you make. Go make truth your center, and every decision that you make will lead to you being a noble person, because it will give you security and clear guidance to bring true wisdom in your life. That wisdom will become a spark or a catalyst or a release of direct power and ambition. You want to go achieve goals that are, like I said, 1,000% higher than what you thought, and over the course of your life, exponentially greater than what you ever could have as a whole. Go base your life off of true principles, because everything that flows from them will give you the strength, power, wisdom, security, guidance, all of it, to go do things that you never thought possible. And you'll go and get those things that you wanted previously when your center was money-centered or just wife-centered or family-centered or whatever. You'll go get the same things, but you'll get them in way bigger quantity, and when you do get them, you will not be empty. You'll actually have a real source of meaning. And as Covey says, clarifying our center and basing it off of true principles affects everything about our experience within the choices that we make. We might make some of the same decisions as if we had a different center, but everything about the experience will get, and the context to our life as a whole will be different. This is a bit of a deep one, like kind of a complicated one, but I've tried to really dumb it down as if I was trying to teach myself who did not understand this previously. So I'm going to finish there because, even though we only got like one page in, basically. Actually, you know what? I need to finish this idea of the securities really fast because there's a couple concepts here that I think are going to really drive this home. These life support factors also undergird every other dimension of life, and none of them is an all or nothing matter. The degree to which we have developed each one could be charted somewhere on a continuum, much like the maturity continuum described earlier. So like, just because we might be a little bit family-centered doesn't mean we're not also a little bit principle-centered or a little bit money-centered, right? But the idea is to diminish on that continuum the centers that don't matter and maximize on that continuum of how much centered we are on truth, so that we can actually have a meaningful and fulfilling life. And then, if you say you want to go just do something freaking grand and audacious, have the ability to actually go do it. At the bottom end, the four factors are weak. You're basically dependent on circumstances or other people, these things over which you have no direct control. At the top end, you're in control. So at the top end of the spectrum of how much you derive your security from this like center of principles, you have independent strength and the foundation for rich interdependent relationships. Your security lies somewhere on the continuum between extreme insecurity on one end. So now he's going to describe what the continuum is of these things. Extreme insecurity on one end, wherein your life is buffeted by all the fickle forces that play upon it, and a deep sense of high intrinsic worth and personal security on the other end. Extreme insecurity on one end, fickle as the wind, high security on the other end. You have a high intrinsic worth of personal security on the other end. Your guidance ranges on the continuum from dependence on the social mirror, so how people view you socially, or the unstable fluctuating sources of strong inner direction. Your wisdom falls, or on the other end, strong inner direction, right? So it's dependence on the social mirror or strong inner direction. Your wisdom falls somewhere between a totally inaccurate map where everything is distorted and nothing seems to fit, and on the other end, a complete inaccurate map of life wherein all parts and principles are properly related to each other. Even if you're not balancing your time on any one given thing, as everyone's telling you should, you're able to have a balance of meaning in your life because where your time is not being spent in certain aspects, like maybe you're spending time building your career in your 20s and 30s, but you're not spending as much time with your wife. That doesn't mean you're unbalanced in your marriage. It just means that you have the sense of security, wisdom, guidance, and power to go set proper expectations and explain and help build out that life with her so that she understands where that time is being put in and how and so on. And a complete and accurate map of your life. Anyway, your power lies somewhere in between immobilization or being a puppet pulled by someone else's strings to high proactivity, the power to act according to your own values instead of being acted upon by other people's circumstances. I see this one a lot in people who are spouse-centered. The location of these factors on the continuum, the resulting degree of their integration, harmony, and balance, and their positive impact on every other aspect of life is a function of your center, the basic paradigms at your very core. I'll let you guys stew on that one, but we did finish that. Anyway, I'm just grateful that if anybody's still listening to this, frankly. But if not, this has been really a source of great meaning for me, and I'm just grateful to be able to do it. And if you guys like what I'm doing, make sure that you subscribe and like it. I'm going to be doing an incentive here pretty soon to have people share this stuff with others, especially if you work for me. That's who I'm going to be doing the incentive to, is the people that work for me. So make sure that you share any of the things that you're not only learning, but like the links to Spotify, to Apple Podcasts, comment on the YouTube channel, the things that you're learning. And I'm really excited to see, I know, again, Talon was, I think, the first one to comment on the YouTube video. And thank you for doing that, Talon. Any of you other guys, make sure, guys and girls, make sure that you're commenting and sharing, because I think this stuff is really powerful. But if nothing else, it will increase your output exponentially. I seriously am talking about 1,000% increase in production. And if it's even half that, I promise you that it is worth it, which I know that it is. So make sure that you apply it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.